The first batch of political party funding act donations have been revealed. Only 3 political parties, the ANC, DA and Action SA, have declared donations above the legislative threshold of 100,000 rand. Well, for analysis, we're joined by Elections Analyst Wayne Sussman and My Vote Counts Director Minhaj Jeenah. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Perhaps let me just begin by your own analysis of what has been tabled in this quarterly report, the first of its kind really in the country, and what it tells us about the state of declarations that we're seeing under this new legislation. Minhaj, let me begin with you.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. I think it's a lot to celebrate. I think the fact that the IEC, despite being under tremendous pressure to deliver on a number of things, have delivered on this sometime before the deadline. I think we don't have sufficient information yet to provide critical analysis of the disclosures and who has disclosed and who hasn't disclosed. We have asked the IEC for that information, but in the main, I think it's a lot to celebrate.
Wayne?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Jeenah. However, as he said, it's very important when one does comparison to compare it to the past set of data. And this is pretty opaque. Many South Africans would not know who gives what to political parties and how much they've given. Some past anecdotal numbers I remember from the 2019 election campaign was that the DA said that they spent about 100 million rand on the campaign, and I think the ANC was double that. So when one looks at those figures, it will tell you that either the political parties haven't raised enough big donations, or that there are many, many donations, let's say between the 90,000 and 99,000 bracket. So that is very, very interesting for me. Also, some people who we know, some captains of industry who are associated with political parties who aren't on the list we received today. I think of the Patrice Motsepe and the ANC. I think of the Els family, who traditionally are the largest donors to the ANC in the Northern Cape province. I didn't see their names. When it comes to the DA, one thinks of Michiel Leroux. When one thinks of EFF, I can think of certain donors in the Sandhurst area whose names didn't appear on the list. That is interesting. Where are these people who are traditionally proudly associated with the political parties they support, and their names do not feature on these lists today?
You know, part of what you're raising, Wayne, brings us to a very important issue, and that's really the extent to which declarations are being made by the political parties. We're entering a season of elections, and, you know, I put this question to Janet Love earlier, that with the kind of campaigns that political parties run, we know generally it runs into the tens of millions of rand, and as you rightfully said, hundreds of millions in some instances. And yet what we are seeing declared is so little, and we're already beginning to see the election machinery of some parties kick into action. So what does that mean for this election cycle, Minhaj? Does it mean that whenever we see a political parties printing pamphlets that we know and can very easily do calculations over a certain amount, we should know that there's probably money going in there that hasn't been declared?
I think that's true. I think Wayne is correct. I think there's a lot to be suspicious of. I think, though, it is important to note that the IEC's briefing was limited. It was limited to a short period from beginning of April this year until the end of July this year. So it's only 4 months. And I think we're going to have to wait for the next set of disclosures and the ones after that. So the next 2, I think, will be crucial in giving us information on how parties raised the money to carry out these big campaigns.
And Wayne, the responsibility of declaring lies not just with the political parties, but also with the donors. Do you think that will give some donors cold feet?
Yeah, I do think that some donors will get cold feet at nailing their colours to the mast of a political party. We know that some donors like to give to multiple political parties, whether that's to hedge their bets or whether they really believe in this idea of a multi-party democracy. So I do think that some donors will get cold feet, and that's obviously a negative because it does cost, on the whole, I'm very supportive of this, don't get me wrong, but that is a negative. You do want people, private or institutions, to have the opportunity to give money to a political party without fear of repercussion, without fear of having their reputation sullied. So we want our political parties to be funded. We want parties to be able to campaign properly in an election, particularly in a local government election, where you're not fielding, say, a premier candidate and a presidential candidate, but thousands of ward candidates across the country, thousands of lists across hundreds of lists across the country. So you do need money to fight these election campaigns, and I do hope the parties will be able to raise it sufficiently.
Of course, the alternative for those who want to donate is that if they don't want to give the money directly to political parties, they can always use the multi-party fund to contribute to democracy in the country. Are we seeing that, however, coming through?
So there was one donation of 2,500 rand, which was obviously below that 100,000. I think anything above 100,000 rand had to be made public. I think that amount was 2,500 rand from a Mr. Paul Graham. He was the only one, I think they declared he was the only one who donated. So we've still got a while to go to see that I think it's called, Mr. Jeenah will know the proper name, I think it's called the Multiparty Democracy Fund, for that fund to realize its full potential.
2,500 rand, how far can it really go, Minhaj, amongst the represented parties, at least 15 of the represented parties?
Well, not far at all. According to the Act, the amount has to be, the fund has to have R1 million in it in order for the IEC to actually disperse it. So that 2,500 rand can't do much or anything right now. But I think it's an important point, and I think as my vote counts, we support the IEC's decision to encourage people to donate to the Multiparty Democracy Fund. We believe that this is an alternative to private funding. It is a way to broaden the funding base, to democratize the funding base in a way. So we do believe that this has potential, but it's not showing its potential yet.
What are the fears, Wayne, that people could have when it comes to putting their money towards the multi-party fund? Because I imagine one of the considerations will be, well, that's fine, that fund is split across political parties, so I don't really want to give my 3,000 rand for it to be split amongst everybody according to the proportional representation.
Yeah, I would say that the risks are lower. There should be very few fears, but one can also be cynical to say, is that donor trying to hedge their bets, hoping that they're going to give money to the multi-party fund and reminding those political parties, whether it's the IFP Northern KwaZulu-Natal or a party like ICOSA in the Klein Karoo in the Cape, to the DA in the Western Cape, to the ANC in Eastern Cape, that they can go knocking on their doors after the election and say, look, we gave you funds and now we expect something in return. That's a cynical view of people who give to multiple political parties. But I agree with Minhaj that this is positive in the spirit of encouraging people to give many political parties a chance to contest freely and fairly.
In terms of expectations then for this election cycle, given what has been declared, does it mean we should expect muted campaigns for the elections? Wayne, I'll start with you.
Again, as Minhaj said, we're at the beginning phase of this, and we don't have past data to compare this with. But we are a long way off of the numbers it will take to fight this election. Remember, the EFF and the DA registered candidates in every single ward in South Afrika, including municipalities where they currently do not have any representation. The ANC are going to hope that when the registration process opens again and they'll be able to write the mess of the candidate submission process, that they'll also be contesting everywhere in the country. And that does take a huge amount of resources. We have political parties who are going to be contesting this election for the first time, parties like Action SA. We have political parties who didn't do so well in 2016 are expecting to do much better this time. They'll need a lot more funding. So it is going to take a lot of money to contest these elections, and the parties will certainly have to raise a lot more money looking at the data which we see today.
Minhaj, let me give you a chance to respond on the same question.
Yes, I agree with Wayne. I agree that we can't tell much from the data we have currently, but it does seem that many donors did get cold feet and will have cold feet, and we're seeing a financial crisis within ANC already. So I do suspect that funding campaigns will be muted, particularly from the bigger parties.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. My Vote Counts Director Minhaj Jeenah and Elections Analyst Wayne Sussman. Thank you both for your time tonight.